Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism. So here's the question. Can I make a relationship with a narcissistic person work? It's a question everybody wants an answer to. Let's get to that today. You got to drop your answer to that in the comments, okay? So can you make a relationship with a narcissistic person work? My answer to that is it depends on what you mean by work. Many people ask me this question, so let's just break down what your options are. Out in the world there are relationships that are healthy, characterized by respect, kindness, compassion, growth, self-awareness, regulation, equitability. That's what everyone should be striving for, because it's healthiest for us. There are relationships that are volatile, characterized by conflict, verbal aggression and abuse, perhaps other forms of abuse, impulsivity, dysregulation, criticism, contempt. This is what nobody should be striving for. There are relationships that we can call them inert. The trains run on time. There isn't that much connection or joy, but nobody is really yelling. It's sort of structured indifference. Maybe there's some sort of, feels like obligatory sex at times or hand holding or whatever, maybe a few pleasant moments. But largely, there isn't a lot of there anymore. But there really isn't much conflict or emotion. I don't think this is healthy, but I do know that more than a few people find themselves in this. There are relationships that are imbalanced. One person's needs are met, the other person's needs are not met. And this really only works when one person just capitulates or gives in to the needs of the other person, a sort of relational handmaid's tale. You may be wondering why the hell this would happen. Well, these may be relationships characterized by tremendous dependency, fear of conflict, cultural beliefs around duty and obligation. These may be relationships that also have with them an underlying sense of menace, where one person knows that they cannot step out of line, so they quietly acquiesce. These are also absolutely not healthy. Now, so we can sort of think of this as sort of a door number 1, door number 2, door number 3, and we're adding a door number 4. In a narcissistic relationship, remember, door number 1 is a healthy relationship. In a narcissistic relationship, you're only going to get doors number 2, 3, or 4. Door number 1, like I said, is not an option. There is no version of this that'll look empathic, respectful, equitable, kind, compassionate, joyful, and regulated. So let's just shut that door down. Door number 2 is bad. It's always bad. Volatile and high conflict is always bad. So that outcome is not an example of a narcissistic relationship working. It's a bad, dangerous relationship, so let's just get rid of that. So that leaves doors number 3 and 4. And when people ask me, can I make a relationship work with a narcissistic person? My answer is, I guess so, if you're okay with either door number 3 or door number 4. Let's revisit option number 3, that idea of structured indifference. It's obviously not soul-filling or growth-oriented, but it's also not as abusive. Now, how can you make that kind of structured indifferent kind of happen with a narcissistic person? Expect very little and have a lot of radical acceptance. These relationships are what they are. Some good days, lots of bad days, unpredictability. Your needs won't typically be honored and may even be shamed. There will be manipulation, there will be gaslighting, lots of not going deep, and then an attempt to find joy, meaning, purpose, and fulfillment outside of the relationship. Your children or work, friends, volunteering and community involvement, hobbies. Yeah, there may even every so often be some warmth in your relationship, but it won't be consistent. And it will feel relatively impoverished compared to what you see in other relationships. If you can find this structured indifference to be a suitable outcome, and trust me when I tell you a lot of people remain in this space, then you may be able to make it work. You may wonder, why would someone settle for this? Lots of reasons. And I don't think that they're sort of reasons they should be judged for. Some people might feel committed to keeping children in a single consistent space. Financial issues, religious or cultural or social reasons. Now, what doesn't work is staying in the structured indifferent situation with hope, because it's not going to change. And also what is not going to work is if you are staying for children, continuing having the same arguments and continually sharing your discontent. It's not going to change, and it's not good for your kids to be in that kind of environment where people are always fighting. It's definitely not optimal for children to also grow up with that indifference, but it beats volatility any day. So if you can do the whole radical acceptance and realistic expectations thing and disengage, that's one version of it working. Option 4 is a bit yikes, but it involves you sort of simply giving in to the things they want completely. You may wonder, what's the difference between door number 3 and door number 4? Well, in number 3, you aren't giving in. You're just expecting little, and you aren't surprised when they're being entitled or egocentric or unempathic or manipulative. It's a resigned shrug, but you're not fawning over them or trying to sort of admire them. Option 4 is a bit more of playing the narcissistic person's ground game, giving them supply, making them look good, always giving in to what they want, even if it doesn't work for you, being sort of the trope of the devoted and sacrificial spouse. Now, in the vast majority of binary hetero-gendered stereotypes, this is the obedient and abnegated and self-sacrificed wife. However, I have seen cases where this was a husband. Now, this may be cultural, the time-worn idea that a spouse, especially a wife, should be self-sacrificing. Literally, I have grown up in such a culture where the prevailing belief was that a wife was being a good wife if she was in perpetual servitude to her husband, and that it was a privilege for her to do so. Please do not get me started. So if the wife conducts the role as the society expects, it's a complete giving in to that. And even still, when people give up everything for the narcissistic person, they still endure narcissistic abuse. But if a person wants to make that option work, then that would be the equivalent of making a narcissistic relationship work. Listen, any relationship, when you could give up on being seen or heard or recognized or your needs recognized, and you as a separate human being with separate experiences and perceptions, that's the only time a narcissistic relationship works. The challenge is that most people don't want this and may try to make the narcissistic relationship into something else, a place where they want to be seen or heard or valued. Obviously, very reasonable asks. It's just not happening in this kind of a relationship. Listen, I'm not trying to be paradoxical or contrarian. Like I told you, these are not good options. And you say, well, I'm not putting up with this. The fact is, though, lots of people can't leave these relationships. But trying to draw water from an empty well can break a person's spirit. I think that keeping it real, when people ask me, can it work? My answer is yes-ish, as long as you understand what works really means. I'm sorry to sort of burst your bubbles. I also recognize a lot of people can't go. But when you're able to be realistic with yourself about what you're in, may not be the love story you want for yourself, but at least you can be honest with yourself and not live in a fiction that leaves you even more confused and self-blaming. Thanks again.